The sound echoed first, not loud, not sharp, just a dull, humiliating crack that carried farther than it should have. The kind of sound that doesn't just hit skin but sinks into memory. In a courtroom built to command silence and respect, it felt obscene. People gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." And at the center of it all stood a black woman in a plain grey dress, her head turned slightly to the side, her cheek already burning, her eyes wide not with fear, but with something far more dangerous, clarity. Her name was Alana Brooks, and up until that moment she had been invisible to most of the people in that room. Just another defendant, they would have said. Just another case file stacked among hundreds. Another name to be mispronounced. Another body to be managed. The two cops nearest her didn't look surprised by what had just happened. One of them had struck her. The other stood rigid, jaw clenched, eyes scanning the room as if daring anyone to challenge what they had just witnessed. The judge's bench loomed above them all, dark polished wood, elevated just enough to remind everyone who held power there. But the judge wasn't sitting in it. Not yet. Earlier that morning, Alana had woken up before her alarm, the way she always did on days that mattered. The ceiling fan in her small apartment hummed unevenly, clicking every third rotation. She lay still, staring at a crack in the ceiling shaped like a crooked river, thinking about her mother's voice, calm and steady, telling her years ago that dignity was something no one could give you and no one could take unless you let them. Alana had smiled at the memory then, not knowing how much she would need it. She had chosen the grey dress carefully. Conservative, modest, the kind of outfit people said made you look respectable. As if respect was something you could sew into fabric, as if it weren't already owed. She pulled her hair back into a low bun, minimal makeup, no jewellery except a thin silver chain she never took off. On it hung a tiny scale of justice, worn smooth by years of nervous fingers. The charge against her sounded simple when spoken aloud, contempt of court. But nothing about how she had gotten there was simple. She had been a public defender once. A good one. The kind who stayed late, who remembered birthdays, who returned calls. Until she wasn't allowed to be one anymore. Until a single case, a single judge, and a single moment of speaking out of turn had ended her career in a way no appeal could fix. Now she stood on the other side of the room she once navigated with confidence. The bailiff had called her name wrong. "Alana," he'd said, dragging the vowels out carelessly. "It's Alana," she corrected softly. That had been mistake number one. The judge that day, a substitute filling in while the regular judge was delayed, had barely looked up. "You'll answer when addressed," he snapped. Alana had swallowed her pride. She had learned long ago how dangerous it was to push back too hard, too fast. But when the prosecutor misstated a fact, when he claimed she had interrupted proceedings aggressively, something in her chest tightened. "That's not accurate," she said, calm but firm. That was mistake number two. The courtroom shifted immediately. Air thickened. Eyes snapped toward her, toward the judge, toward the two officers stationed like sentinels near the defense table. The judge's face flushed, a blotchy red crawling up his neck. "Remove her," he barked. "On what grounds?" Alana asked, before she could stop herself. Mistake number three. The officers moved fast, too fast. One grabbed her arm, fingers digging into muscle. She winced but didn't cry out. She had seen this before, from the other side. She knew how it ended when people panicked. People panicked. "Oh, don't touch me like that," she said evenly. "I'm not resisting." That was when the slap came. A single motion, hand open, a warning they would later call it, a reflex, a misunderstanding. They would use words that floated, words that avoided responsibility, but everyone in that courtroom saw it. Time did something strange in the seconds that followed. Alana didn't fall, she didn't scream, she didn't raise her hands. She simply turned her head back slowly, deliberately, and looked at the officer who had struck her. There was no rage in her eyes, only resolve. Somewhere in the gallery, a woman started to cry quietly. A man shook his head, muttering under his breath. The court reporter's fingers hovered over the keys, uncertain. The judge, still not seated, still shuffling papers behind the bench, hadn't yet registered what had happened. Alana straightened her spine, and in that moment something shifted, not in the room, within her. You don't know this yet, but this is the point where the story turns. This is the breath before the leap, the silence before the verdict that no one saw come. This took a second. If this story's low and threatening, you should have kept your mouth shut. And the officer leaned in closer, his voice low and threatening. You should have kept your mouth shut. Alana met his gaze. You just made a very serious mistake. He laughed. Quietly. Confidently. The laugh of a man who believed the room would protect him. The judge finally looked up. What's going on here? He demanded, irritation lacing his voice. Before anyone could answer, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. A hush fell, instinctive and immediate. An older woman stepped inside, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. She wore a tailored navy suit and carried herself with the effortless authority of someone who never needed to raise her voice to be heard. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the officers stiffened. Alana felt it before she understood it. A presence, a gravity. The woman paused just inside the doorway, eyes scanning the room, taking in every detail. The officers, the judge standing awkwardly behind the bench, the defendant with a red mark blooming on her cheek. Their eyes met. Recognition flashed across the woman's face, followed by something else. Something sharper. The judge's irritation evaporated. Judge Harper, he stammered, stepping aside from the bench. I didn't expect. Judge Evelyn Harper said nothing. She walked forward slowly, heels clicking against the polished floor, each step deliberate. When she reached the front of the room, she stopped. And then, without asking permission, without hesitation, she turned and sat down in the judge's seat. The room froze. Alana's heart pounded, not with fear now, but with a realization so sudden it almost stole her breath. Because Judge Harper wasn't just any judge. And the reason she was here had everything to do with Alana Brooks. Judge Harper folded her hands, looked directly at the officer who had slapped Alana, and spoke in a calm, even tone that carried more power than any shout ever could. Officer, she said, I suggest you explain very carefully why a woman was assaulted in my courtroom. And just like that, the balance of power began to tilt, but no one yet understood how far it was about to fall. The officer opened his mouth, then closed it again. His confidence faltered, replaced by something brittle and uncertain. He glanced sideways at his partner, then toward the prosecutor's table, as if searching for a lifeline. None came. I asked you a question, Judge Harper said, her voice calm, precise. And I will not repeat myself. The judge, who had been presiding only moments earlier, stood frozen a step behind her, hands clasped awkwardly, suddenly unsure where to place himself in a room that no longer belonged to him. The gallery was so silent that the faint hum of the overhead lights felt deafening. The officer cleared his throat. Your Honor, the defendant was being disruptive. She refused to comply with lawful orders. Judge Harper tilted her head slightly. A disruptive, she repeated. Is that what you call striking an unrestrained woman in open court? The officer's jaw tightened. She was escalating the situation. Alana watched all of this as if from underwater. Her cheek throbbed, heat radiating outward, but the pain felt distant now. What filled her instead was a strange electric awareness. Every word mattered. Every breath. Judge Harper turned her gaze to Alana for the first time since sitting down. Not a casual glance, a deliberate assessment. Miss Brooks, she said. Are you injured? Alana swallowed. Her voice when it came was steady. And no broken skin, just impact. Judge Harper nodded once. Thank you. She looked back at the officer. You're dismissed from this courtroom. Now, the officer blinked. Your Honor. Now? Judge Harper repeated, steel threading through the softness. For a heartbeat, it looked as if he might argue. His shoulders squared, training an ego warring with instinct. Then something in Judge Harper's eyes made the decision for him. He stepped back, face flushed, and exited through the side door. His partner followed without a word. A collective exhale rippled through the room. Judge Harper turned to the bailiff. I'll secure the doors. No one leaves. Yes, Your Honor. The click of the doors locking sounded louder than the slap had. Judge Harper leaned back slightly in the chair, fingers still folded. And now, she said, addressing the room, we are going to do this correctly. She gestured to Alana. Miss Brooks, please come forward. Alana hesitated only a fraction of a second. Walking toward the bench felt surreal, like stepping into a memory she hadn't realized she still carried. She took each step carefully, conscious of every eye on her, aware of the whispering tension crackling beneath the surface. When she reached the front, Judge Harper studied her again. Do you recognize me? Alana's throat tightened. Yes, Your Honor. A murmur spread through the gallery. And would you care to tell the court how we know each other? Judge Harper asked. Alana closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, she looked straight ahead. I clerked for you, she said. 12 years ago. The murmurs grew louder. Judge Harper nodded. Atop of your class. Sharp mind, relentless work ethic. She paused. You left abruptly. The substitute judge shifted uncomfortably behind her. The prosecutor stared down at his notes, suddenly very interested in rearranging papers. I was disbarred, Alana said quietly. Why? Judge Harper asked. The question hung heavy in the air. Alana took a breath. Because I accused a sitting judge of coercing plea deals to inflate conviction statistics. I brought evidence. It was deemed inappropriate. Judge Harper's eyes flicked just briefly to the man standing behind her. Then back to Alana. And the evidence. It disappeared. The room felt smaller. Tighter? Judge Harper leaned forward. Miss Brooks, do you believe you were treated fairly by this system? Alana didn't answer immediately. She could feel the weight of the question pressing against years of restraint, of silence forced by survival. No, she said finally. I don't. Judge Harper nodded as if she had expected nothing else. She turned to the court reporter. Everything that has occurred today will be entered into the record. Verbatim. The court reporter's fingers flew. Judge Harper then addressed the prosecutor. State your charge. The prosecutor stood, clearing his throat. A contempt of court, Your Honor. The defendant repeatedly interrupted proceedings and failed to show proper respect. Judge Harper raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Harper folded her hands again. And is it your position that contempt justifies physical assault? The prosecutor hesitated. No, Your Honor, but... Judge Harper interrupted. You were content to let it happen. The prosecutor flushed. I didn't authorize... Sit down, Judge Harper said. He did. Judge Harper turned back to Alana. And Miss Brooks, you are no longer a practicing attorney. But are you still familiar with courtroom procedure? Yes, Your Honor. Good, Judge Harper said. Then you'll appreciate the irony. She reached beneath the bench and pulled out a thin folder. The motion was unhurried, deliberate. She opened it and removed a document, holding it up just enough for the room to see. This courthouse is currently under administrative review, she said. Effective today. The substitute judge's face drained of colour. That review isn't. Judge Harper cut him off with a look. It is now. She continued, this morning before I arrived. I received a report alleging misconduct by multiple officers and at least one judge assigned to this building. The room erupted into whispers. Judge Harper raised her hand and silence returned. I came here unannounced for a reason. Her gaze locked onto Alana again. Miss Brooks, your case is the reason. Alana's breath caught. You see, Judge Harper said, when someone tells the truth loudly enough, long enough, eventually it echoes. She placed the document back on the bench. Your contempt charge is dismissed. A sharp intake of breath rippled through the gallery. But, Judge Harper added, holding up a finger, that is not the end of your involvement here. Alana frowned slightly. Your Honor? Judge Harper's voice softened. Miss Brooks, I have read every word you wrote in your complaint 12 years ago. I remember what it cost you to file it. She paused. And I remember telling you that the law moves slowly, but it remembers. The room felt like it was holding its breath with her. Judge Harper leaned forward again, eyes intense. I need your testimony, publicly, on the record. Alana's pulse quickened. A testimony against whom? Judge Harper didn't answer right away. She glanced toward the back of the courtroom, toward the locked doors, toward a hallway where powerful people moved freely, confident they were untouchable. Against the system, she said finally. That thought you were broken. Alana opened her mouth to respond, and the courtroom doors rattled violently. A heavy knock thundered through the room, urgent and insistent. Judge Harper's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered beneath her calm. Do not open those doors, she said quietly. The knocking grew louder, and from behind the doors a voice called out, sharp with authority, Judge Harper, you need to step away from the bench immediately. The words sliced through the room like a blade. Every head turned toward the doors, then back to Judge Harper, as if the crowd were watching a duel unfold in real time. The voice beyond the door was unmistakably confident, practiced, accustomed to obedience. Judge Harper didn't rise. She didn't even blink. Who is that? Alana asked quietly, though something in her chest already knew the answer. Judge Harper's eyes remained fixed on the doors. That, she said, It's the sound of a man who believes rank outranks justice. The knocking stopped. Silence pressed in, thick and heavy, before the voice returned, calmer now, almost polite. "Evelyn, we can discuss this privately." The familiarity made the air crackle. Judge Harper leaned slightly toward the microphone. "This court is in session," she said. "If you have business here, you may enter when invited." A beat passed. Then the bailiff shifted nervously. "Your Honor, that's Chief Justice Raymond Cole." A wave of shock rippled through the gallery. Alana felt it hit her like a physical force. The Chief Justice, the highest judicial authority in the state. The man whose signature could end careers or erase them. Judge Harper finally turned her head. "I'm aware." Alana searched Judge Harper's face for doubt, for hesitation. There was none. Only resolve, honed by decades of navigating rooms where power tried to bend truth into silence. Judge Harper raised her voice. "Chief Justice Cole, you are welcome to observe these proceedings from the gallery. The bench is occupied." The lock clicked. The doors opened. Chief Justice Raymond Cole stepped inside, flanked by two uniformed officers who looked distinctly uncomfortable being there. Cole was tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed. His smile was measured, diplomatic, the kind that suggested reasonableness while concealing calculation. "Evelyn," he said again, hands raised slightly in a gesture of peace. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Judge Harper met his gaze. "You're interrupting an active hearing." Cole's eyes flicked briefly to Alana, then back. "This isn't a hearing. This is a misunderstanding that spiraled." Alana felt the familiar sting of being reduced, minimized. A misunderstanding. A word that swallowed harm whole and left nothing behind. Judge Harper gestured toward the front row of the gallery. "Take a seat, Raymond." He hesitated. Just a fraction. Then he complied, sitting, crossing one leg over the other, hands folded neatly in his lap. The officers remained by the door. Judge Harper addressed the room. Fromage and Doge Harper addressed the room. "Let the record reflect that the Chief Justice has entered during an active proceeding without invitation." Cole smiled faintly. Always the stickler. "Yes," Judge Harper replied. "That's what kept me employed." The smile faded. Judge Harper turned to Alana. "Miss Brooks, do you recognize Chief Justice Cole?" Alana swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor. How? He chaired the disciplinary committee that revoked my license." Cole leaned forward slightly. "And now, Evelyn, that decision was unanimous." Judge Harper held up a hand. "You will speak when addressed." The room went still. Judge Harper continued. "Miss Brooks, were you given an opportunity to present your full evidence before that committee?" "Oh no," Alana said. "I was told it was irrelevant." Cole sighed softly. "We were litigating ancient history." Judge Harper's eyes hardened. "History doesn't become ancient just because it's inconvenient." She reached again beneath the bench and withdrew another document. This one thicker, heavier, she slid it across the surface, stopping it squarely in front of her. "Raymond," she said, using his first name deliberately. "Do you recognize this?" Cole's eyes flicked down. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'd have to look more closely." Judge Harper pushed it forward another inch. "It's an internal memo drafted by your office, detailing concerns about conviction quotas, pressure on lower court judges, and the suppression of dissenting attorneys." A murmur rolled through the room like distant thunder. Cole leaned back. That memo was speculative. She recognized fragments of language, phrases that mirrored the words she had written years ago. Her words, rephrased, sanitized, used without her name. Judge Harper turned to her. "Miss Brooks, does this language look familiar?" Alana stepped closer, eyes scanning the page. Her breath caught. "Ah, yes," she whispered. Zero full height behind the bench. The integrity of the judiciary is compromised when truth is punished and silence is rewarded. The officers by the door shifted, uncertain now which authority they were meant to obey. Cole's voice sharpened. "You don't have the authority to conduct an inquiry like this." "I do when misconduct occurs in my courtroom." She turned to the bailiff. "I call internal affairs." "And the State Oversight Committee." The bailiff hesitated, eyes darting between Cole and Harper. "And now," Judge Harper said. He moved. Cole's composure cracked.